Yo, what is up, everybody? John from Tau Tactics here, bringing you another video. Today we have a very exciting one. We're talking to Kyle Grundy, the current #1 Tau player in the world from the Puretide Program. We discuss how he conceptualizes list building in the current meta and based on the terrain format that he's playing on, the different detachments that he feels are strongest in Pariah Nexus, and how to use Krootox Rampagers outside of the Kroot detachment, which was really interesting to hear. As you can see, most of the people that are watching are not subscribed, so please, if you're enjoying the content, drop me a like, give me a subscribe, and comment down below what matchup you're interested in seeing next for the Montka matchup series. I'm going to pick a comment to highlight in my next video, which will be determined based on what you guys want to see. So please let me know, and we'll get right into it. Awesome. Well, yeah, so thanks again, Kyle, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Before we start today's video, I would love for you to just plug your Discord, which I'm a member of, and just talk a little bit about the Puretide Program and what you have going on there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so Puretide Program is a Discord set up by myself around about 14, 15 months ago when I left Vanguard Tactics. And it is purely just for Tau nerds. And it's the first of its kind in terms of a faction specialist kind of community that's been built. You know, I'm very British. I don't like to kind of toot my own horn, but it is built off a lot of success that I've had over the last 25 bloody years of playing Tau.
Absolutely.
And I think one thing that, for me, what I'm really proud of is that it's, with it being now my sole focus and my business, it's been built upon a lot of the jobs that I've done in the past, which is coaching and managing behaviors and people. And I've been able to be lucky enough to do that within the hobby that I've been playing since I was 13, and it still quite hasn't sunk in yet. So what I offer is a community for free, but then obviously there's paid sections where people can improve their competitive play, or if they're just wanting to just learn a few of the tricks of the trade from myself. I have different tiers to fit every budget, but the key thing is my service is different from everybody else's because it focuses on real engagement. So it's not just videos to watch online. I do have recordings of everything that I do, but it's mainly interactions where you can come ask me questions live on a call full of like-minded individuals and come and get that information that you're after and talk to me and find out the why part, rather than just going, oh, look, he's running this list. Let me copy it. Oh, it's not working. God damn it. So for me, it's very much about, I want to engage with an audience and I want to be able to offer solutions to the problems that my students are facing. And every problem is different depending on meta, depending on the person's skill level. And I'm trying to accommodate all variables in terms of skill levels and journeys, in terms of some people might have just started, some people might be well on in their career. It doesn't matter. I've got the solution. Come and find me. Links I'll send over and all that jazz.
Sweet.
Yeah,
and I'll put them in the description down below. And to your point, so a good example of looking at a list and not knowing what the tech is the Grundy maneuver, which I myself give a lot of credit to that. My best performance at a GT was 5-1. I got 12th at a 200-person tournament, and I used it in every single game that I played, and it was quite strong. It was with Kauyon in the index. So certainly, looking at the WTC list, for example, just in general, the Warmasters list, you look at them and it's really hard to decipher what people are up to, So it is really important to have the why, understand the tactics, like your most recent video that you put out, the Fire Knife teams, which I thought was very innovative. I've heard a lot about the Fire Knife teams, and what I wanted to ask you about, one thing I'm curious about, because as a Tau player, there are times when I don't put Breachers and a Cadre Fireblade on the table. And my opponents are like, buddy, what are you doing? Like, where are those guys? Those are like the bane of my existence. So I'm curious, you put Breachers in your most recent list. You didn't add a Cadre Fireblade. Now, from a novice's perspective, right, I look at putting models on WTC terrain and I think, okay, the angles are smaller, it's more compact. That's an area that Breachers with a Cadre Fireblade would excel. So I'm just curious, I think there are weaknesses in the Breacher team with the Cadre Fireblade. I don't think it's a world beater, but I'm curious why you opted out of just adding, 100 more points to level up those Breacher units and what you changed around. Yeah.
I'm going to do that typical political thing where I answer a question with a question.
Okay.
What wins games of 40k?
In my opinion, is going to be like adapting to different situations.
Simplify it. What wins you a game of 40k versus you and your opponent?
Points.
What's the difference? Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to the most challenging event in the world where points are going to matter.
Yep.
Now, 40k is not won on damage. It assists in the win, but points win games. So, Breacher plus Cadre, to me, is double no prisoner points, and it's also giving away Assassinate. And if you're on objective, it's 2 units on Overwhelming Force.
Fair.
And that's my logic behind not taking the Cadres. And the second part is that the way I use my lists, I give them defined roles before I even go to the table. It's, I need these particular units to do particular things. And my damage, if I was to kind of put focus on the damage for a second, is coming from Fire Knife teams, Riptides. That's what they are designed to do. So I don't need to double up on that damage or asking too much from a Breacher team. Yes, they can absolutely slap when they get to turn 3, +1 to wound, +1 AP, yada, 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 4 rerolls.
Yep.
But why? I would much rather have these units focusing on primary denial, and screening. Hence why I don't need the Cadrify Blades.
Sure. And yeah, when I was running my Kauyon list pre-Codex and whatnot, I actually wasn't running Cadres myself, but it's great to hear a little bit more behind that, behind the curtain a little bit. The other question I had just regarding like list building, which I thought was really cool what you did, which was go to LVO and have such a strong performance. Because I think one of the hardest things for newer players, myself included, I've been playing 40k for a year, is adapting to like things like terrain, for example. So like showing up and doing as well as you did on player place terrain, I thought was really impressive, because again, that is an area that I have not been able to, like if I was going to play a tournament on a WTC terrain, I feel like I would need to fail first before I would find success, right? I'd have to actually put models on the table, mess a bunch of things up, like I couldn't just show up to a tournament and do it. So I'm curious how you conceptualize like how terrain impacts your list building, and it's probably going to be something similar, like how am I going to score points, right? But
I will refrain from asking that question again. So I'll put you on the spot once. Right. I'll put you on the spot in a different way.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Yeah. So for me,
yeah,
everybody has obviously, had that annoying manager or area manager or someone senior turn around and give you those little cliche one-liners. You fail to plan and you plan to fail.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm sorry to say I'm going to use that here because it is fair. 100% true.
Yeah.
So these big events, you've mentioned one of them, the LVO.
Yep.
I play predominantly on UKTC. That is my bread and butter. It's every event. I'm going to one this weekend, and I've got one probably next month, so on and so forth. Yeah. So that is something that I play on, and I can plan for with my eyes closed because it's behaviourally just built in.
Yeah.
So when I'm going to other events like the LVO, the player placed, I had been to LVO before, so I'd experienced the player placed terrain when it was, say, trash, because they were still dealing with a lot of the older pieces of terrain, and they've done phenomenal work to improve the quality of terrain since then. Now, I knew that if we were to reverse it, and the Americans come over to the UKTC, they would have to plan because it's something that they're not familiar with. So I need to pay that same respect back and plan for their terrain as if it was something that I was doing on a regular basis. So what I did is I did a masterclass, but I also prepared a full-on pack where there was 9 versions of different player-placed terrain. Therefore, 9 times 6 games plus shadow rounds and finals that I then sat down on TTS and planned and prepared all of the positioning for both myself if I was going as a defender or attacker. So I actually ended up with a document of around about, I think, 98 different combinations, and I'd sat there and planned, and then I printed it off.
Mm-hmm.
And a funny story is when I was in the shadow round and the judges were there and they accommodated us all and said, "Look, guys, you're going to be knackered, so on and so forth. If you need any assistance, if terrain's not placed correctly, don't worry, we'll help resolve it."
Mm-hmm.
I just basically pulled out a pack and placed it on the table, and the guy was like, "Oh, what's that?" And he was like, "Guys, just to let you know, you're going to struggle on this terrain
to fit
make it all
everything."
work." And I just went, a little bit of British arrogance and went, "You sure about that?" And he was like, "Well, what's this?" And I went, "I'll show you later." And I planned it. Every
Sure.
piece of terrain perfectly fit.
Mm-hmm.
My opponent, absolute hero, lovely guy, but he didn't place his terrain correctly.
Mm.
So one of the feedback that I gave to the judges after the event was that me and my opponent were in front of each other, and he placed a piece of terrain incorrectly, but you were able to rectify that, and you allowed him to adjust it. Think about how unfair that could be, because one person has prepared and planned and got everything perfect. The other person, could be fatigued, doesn't matter. The guy's clearly done very well anyway, so this is no slant on him, but it's just to say that I spotted an inefficiency in terms of they were rewarding failures rather than rewarding somebody who'd planned.
Sure.
So they've adjusted that now because it's all fixed terrain.
Thank
but
goodness.
To answer your question, it's planning. I planned for the event and I put the prep work in, which was a key part of the success that I had at LVO. And this is something that I will always do. And guess what? Did it for the Warmasters, did it for the WTC, and my students that took part in the masterclass also went with that level of preparation.
Sure.
So it's not something that people should look down upon if someone's prepared, because sometimes it's like, we're a bunch of nerds, right? We push toy soldiers around a board.
I mean, come on, we're playing competitive Warhammer 40k. It's time, energy, money. Like, it's if you want to win.
Yeah, but you always get that comment of been like,
really?
What am I like,
oh, man.
nerd? And
come on.
Absolutely.
I absolutely embrace it. Yeah, are you kidding me? I mean, we're making YouTube videos about like, our niche is so small. It's a niche within a niche within a niche, you know what I mean? But that's what makes it fun, in my opinion.
Something you mentioned there, in terms of spending energy, money, and time.
Yeah.
Well, why not put that a little bit of extra effort and energy into, going to an event? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're only preparing because you want to win. If you're, I don't know, a parent or you've got a busy life schedule, you're going to get this one window of opportunity to go and enjoy a game that you clearly have invested loads of money into, and you've got a weekend away from the kids and the wife or your busy life schedule, and you want to do well, but you also want to enjoy your event. And there's nothing like having that first game and feeling unprepared, and maybe you don't get as much events as the people that go constantly. So you want to kind of even that playing field a little bit by just putting a bit of prep work. And we do have a lot of resources available to us nowadays. We have TTS. I hate playing games on TTS, but you can just pull up scenarios and use it as a visual thing. You've also got reviews of tournaments and other community members that you can speak to. So preparation is just like any sport, I suppose. Put in the legwork and the preparation, and you'll be better equipped to doing whatever it is to help you achieve your goal, and whatever goal that may be.
It's a great reminder because, one thing, I play a lot of 40k. Thankfully, out here I live in Denver, and there's a really great 40k community in Denver. Like, every week there's 30 guys who show up. It's not like the UK, right, where you can drive 3 hours and there's tournaments everywhere. I mean, I'm so jealous of you, all you guys. But thankfully we have enough of a community where we've got a GT every 3 months that's local. We've got RTTs every month. So it's really lovely. But one thing that I do not do, I personally have not done it, and I should, is what you explained, which is like actually putting the models, like pre-preparing, deployment, whatnot. Usually what I do is I play the games beforehand, you know what I mean? Like I play the missions, like probably twice, each one of them twice in a GT. I'm like, all right, cool, ready to go. And to your point, like, that isn't really getting me to where I need to be. There's more that I could be doing, and it's just a really good reminder.
I think all boils down to as well is everybody can always improve at the game. So there's a lot of this emphasis on reps.
For sure.
And I think people fall into the trap of, well, that only means that I, play games to get the reps in. Yes, it's important. But I suffered from time management issues when I first started Tau, because I think it's easy to mock a Tau player for how much time they take, but actually when when you're a Tau player, then it's not just about I deploy, I position. You've got to deploy, think about your staging points, then think about, well, actually, I'm setting up this unit to not only plan for an action on a secondary, but then to guide, but then to set up a multiple guiding unit, then also to set up, well, I'll set up another unit just in case this damage doesn't connect. I'll set up another one, so on, so forth.
Oh, yeah.
There is so many things or so many problems to solve, but you have to do it all in those first couple of turns to stage for the following turns, like 3, 4, and 5. So that takes practice. And you're going to be apprehensive of your own ability if you don't get those reps in. But the thing that you can practice in the comfort of your own home is, if you've got a table or even not, just map out some tape and, just think about where am I going to deploy my units? What am I going to do? Having even that as a baseline of something that you prep for will help you in terms of your subconscious memory, your subconscious. You'll be like, when you get to the table, you're like, oh, brilliant, it's this mission. Well, I thought about this, and that can save you so much time.
Sure.
And time isn't just a weapon or a resource. It's actually a resource to allow you to communicate and enjoy the presence of your opponent as well, and talk and connect rather than just going head down, need to focus, need to do this.
Yep.
It will free up a lot of your time to even take a couple of minutes for a cigarette outdoors or a drink or buying your opponent a coffee or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So it helps that communication aspect between you and your opponent, but also helping you prepare in advance by just some of the simple things. And I think that is, again, something that people, whether they're on the beginner or whether they're a veteran, is always something that needs to be constantly revisited. And, addressing where you need to improve and how you can do that without relying on, well, I need to play X amount of hours per week, or maybe, I suppose outside of the UK, in America, for example, I talk to a lot of my friends out there, it takes them like nearly a day and a half to travel just by car to somewhere, or, then you don't quite have the community on their doorstep half the time. So it's how can you get in that practice without physically playing the game?
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's a great point about like deployment and whatnot. Like that is certainly one of the things that you can control, or like we can control as players. And I will say it probably takes up, for me, like in a given game, it probably takes up 10 to 15 minutes. I take like a lot of time on deployment. I take a lot of time on first and second turn. I like using my time as much as possible. I've never gotten timed out, but I've certainly come close a couple times. But just again, encouragement to others to like use your time, like you mentioned, Kyle. Like if something goes wrong in a game, it's okay to use your time to take a step, and it's probably the right decision in some cases. I've certainly gotten there myself a couple times where I've caught myself saying like I need to take a step back because I'm about to make some poor decisions.
Yeah, and I still get, strange enough, a lot of my, if there's any of my UK kind of brothers out there that are going to mock me for talking about time management and be like, oh, well, you're still a slow player, blah, blah, blah. Right? I'm not. I realize that if I can shave a couple of minutes off here and there, then I'm going to become a better player. If I can speed up the process and the way that my brain works, brilliant. That's always going to improve me. But I will use every minute and every second of my time, regardless of whether it goes to time, because if I finish a game 15 minutes, 20 minutes, unless it's the obvious blowout, like an easy matchup, then, well, hang on a minute. I could have got that extra 5 or 6 points or something if I'd have just taken a step back and utilized my time correctly. So the utilizing your time is just as important as, making sure that you finish early or on time. And yeah, some people like to finish early so they can go and grab lunch quicker. That's fine. If you're that type of player, then cool. I can think of many names that play 40k super fast. Nassim, Innes, Wilson, they're all really quick. But they are very consistent. But they've got to that point through whatever methodology they have to get them there. Some people take a lot longer. Some people like to just utilize every minute and every second. And that's me. That's my style.
Same.
Because I look at the time and go, well, you know what? Cool. It's in my control. There is moments, and there have been moments where I've looked at my time and the opponent thinks I'm going to clock out. and I go, okay, well, I've not managed my time accordingly. I've got 6 or 7 minutes to do the last 2 turns. Move, draw my cards, move, done my points, position screen. This one unit has to kill that unit. Done that, right, over to you. And they're like, whoa, okay. All right.
We're not shooting SMS this turn. We're doing the big activations. Yeah, we're doing the important stuff, scoring, whatnot. Very cool. One thing I was curious about. You mentioned in your last video that you were thinking to bring to Warmasters between Kauyon and Retaliation. So I'm curious why you chose Kauyon over Retaliation, and like what were some of the considerations there of one versus the other.
So the easiest one is that Retaliation is still a big question mark. It's an unknown for me. So I needed to go in at my A game because I'm going to be going against people from all around the world representing the countries and representing A game quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was the repetition that I had with Kauyon that I obviously had as a backup, if you will. The decision was purely around this myth of Tau cannot operate effectively on WTC because it's denser, less firing lanes, and you're going to be prone to just having a combat army stage and then hit you and kill you. So I thought, yes, this is a huge possibility that's going to happen, especially with the meta, Blood Angels, T-Suns, World Eaters. That's just a few. And I thought, well, what does Kauyon have? Well, Kauyon has the ability to manipulate charge distances with the photon grenade strap. Can also hop into a Devilfish with a combat embarkation. So those are 2 tools that will serve me very well in that combat-orientated field. Second part was, okay, well, in order to get these angles, I need speed. Fast gun is good gun, right?
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
Well, that's taken from Adam Carmeleri.
Is it from Adam? Yeah, what a beast.
So basically, I thought, okay, well, let's take elements of all 3 detachments and trying to squeeze it into the Kauyon, which I've already explained is perfect against the meta right now. So the Montka side, unfortunately, different conversation for a different day. I feel this doesn't work in Pariah Nexus and 10th edition. It's just flawed.
Really?
Kauyon, yeah, it's flawed. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second.
Great.
But the Kauyon has the tools right now that's needed. And then the Retaliation card has obviously the Crisis Suits, which can offer you speed and can offer you that deep strike threat that you have to have in order to keep an opponent honest. No one's afraid of a single Ghost Kill or 3 Stealth Suits coming in from the side of the board and going hello. But they are afraid of a Crisis Suit brick coming in.
Yeah.
So I took the elements of the Retaliation because I thought, well, I can achieve that close proximity if I rapid ingress and then move 12 and assault, advance, and then still shoot. So hence why the Plasma Fire Knives and the Cold Star came in. So I've got elements of that deep striking, Retaliation. I've got the aggression that would usually come from the Montka detachment, and I've also got the Kauyon ability to manipulate charges and hopping in and out of Devilfishes. Plus the one hell of a drug sustain hits too.
It is one hell of a drug.
From turn 2 with the Exemplar Kauyon meant that the opponent's plan versus Tau has always been and will always be, I will stage turn 2 and then I will come and hit, or turn 1 and come and hit you, or turn 2. So the fact that you've got a piece that can go in on turn 2 and hit what they're trying to dig in and stage means that it takes away the power of what they're reliably using to offset you because your army-wide rule kicks in on turn 3. So I merged all 3 of those detachments together.
Very cool. Yeah, I like the idea that or the concept that you kind of put together of dropping the 1 crisis unit turn 2, the 2nd crisis unit turn 3. I thought that was, conceptually it just like made a lot of sense to me. But I would love to hear. So like my most played detachment is Montka. And I've been doing a matchup series for Montka specifically. I'd love to hear more about what you think about how it's flawed. I don't think it's a perfect detachment by any means, but I do think it has, in my opinion, if you're going to pick up Tau, I feel like it has the lowest floor of like performance. I think so. Anywho, just would love to hear more about your opinion on Montka.
Well, rather than dumpster firing on the Montka, let's talk about the prior Nexus and what GW have done to fix gambits.
Yes.
Secret missions.
Uh-huh.
Secret missions is currently purposefully designed this way. It's not an accident from GW.
Mm-hmm.
They have messed with the points differential to make games closer.
Sure.
So secret mission favors late game scoring.
Mm-hmm.
And what does Tau usually struggle with? Primary early doors.
Yep.
Being able to have the unbroken wall hold 3 objectives in no man's land if you're going second is just so easy because everything's going to be dead.
Yep.
So you just go, there's 20 points. I held my home field for 4 turns. That's 20 points. That's 40.
Yep.
Jobs are good and I just do better on secondaries.
Sure.
So that goes against Montka
Mm-hmm.
because it favors you getting aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And the first 2 turns of a game is always trading. It's resource management. If you look at your own win percentages on your Tabletop Battles app, you will see your go first win rate and your go second win rate.
Yep.
If your go first win rate is higher, it means that you're a more aggressive player and you're probably very good at positioning and aggressive positioning to get board control.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're probably bad at is resource management.
Mm-hmm.
And then the flip side, Kauyon, or the go second win rate,
Mm-hmm.
is more about you are very good at keeping your resources alive, but you're probably poorer at setting up board presence because you're trying to keep too many things safe.
Yep.
So I always look at Kauyon as, well, I will happily lose 33% of my force before turn 3 because I will be gaining 33% back.
Yep.
Rather than trying to keep all my damage dealers alive to then do, a 33% more when that's not the way the game works.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Montka is a pure comparison. Look at Sisters,
Mm-hmm.
the Bringers of Flame.
Yep.
That's got the speed, the power of Montka, but consistently through the game.
Yep.
Montka, there is only one build that Montka can do, and it doesn't offer flexibility to why we chose Tau as a faction.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a very in-depth codex that we can use multiple things to tackle the meta.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a build where you just go 7 to 9 piranhas, 3 iron hammerheads, 3 riptides, 1 breacher fish, and some other 3 stealth suits in the Pathfinder team. Go, here's 3 piranhas, bam, killed you, cool. You shoot me back, I -2 CP for -1 damage, cool. Next, I've staged my riptides and my next piranhas, bam, do it again, bam, do it again. You've not left the deployment zone.
Sure.
Now, as much as that sounds exciting for people that like to be aggressive, against a top competitive player, they just go, okay, well, I'm going to sacrifice all my small little resources, slow you down, you run out of juice, and then I will play the Kauyon back to you.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the way that the game is currently played.
Mm-hmm.
Having an army-wide rule that you can choose to be aggressive and fast whenever you want is good.
Mm-hmm.
Being limited to the first 3 turns with the way that the game's designed is not.
Yep.
So I feel that that's why it's flawed, and that's why you would probably favor retaliation, because then you can do the similar sort of aggression, but you're in control of it of when you need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why I talk about retaliation being the master of both Kauyon and Montka, because you need to know when to be defensive and when to be aggressive. And that's my take on why Montka is bad. But the second thing, the last thing I'd say about it is that the way that I've been evolving and designing my lists and playing them have always been a counter product to the meta in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
So at any given point, Montka could be the bee's knees because the meta is dictating that we need to do that first 3 turns.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, no, but that's not to say in the future it couldn't be the go-to detachment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting that you talk about it that way because, so I played only Kauyon, obviously, at the beginning of the edition. I probably got 100 games in with it. And in Leviathan, I would say Kauyon it took a lot of skill to be good at it because the first 2 turns of the game I found were really critical, right? And like the Grundy maneuver really helped, and units, I know you don't like them. Honestly, my favorite unit in the Tau army before the Codex was Anfa. That man was the abs. I know. I'm sorry. Last week, just cover your ears for a little bit. Yeah, walk away. But it was him and solo crisis commanders. And man, I was just those guys. The +1 to wound commander on turn 3 coming down, just take one shot greater demons. Like it was gross with the Tetra rules. Anywho, in Leviathan, so I was just yearning for an ability to play a strong, aggressive army the first 2-3 turns of the game, right? The first couple turns of the game. And so when we got the Codex, we got Pariah Nexus, I was like, okay, sweet, now I could play Montka. But to your point, the game is slower now. It's slowed down a little bit, and you're pulling me back in a little bit. I just needed a change of pace. I was like, man, I've played so many games of Kauyon. I want to be the proactive player, which you can certainly do with Kauyon. But to your point, Pariah Nexus, absolutely. I think it does favor an army that's stronger in the later games of the later turns of the game. And I am messing with Retaliation a little bit. It is difficult. I've only played I played like 15 games, and yeah, it's a complete departure from my previous skill set.
The Retaliation's one that I was just on a call this evening, and I was talking about the Retaliation where I kind of had an oops kind of moment when I was at the last evening of Belgium, and we were getting absolutely shit-faced.
Hell yeah.
Popular, and I was like, oh god, I've not submitted my list for Leeds GT, which is happening this coming weekend.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, send. And I just sent a Retaliation list, and I looked at it afterwards, and I was like, okay, I'm going balls to the wall here. I've gone with the Retaliation list with only one form of anti-tank.
What is it?
It's basically my list that I'm taking is it's just a Sunforge unit with
Farsight.
Just
one Sunforge unit.
I've gone with Commander Farsight, 2 Cold Stars. Both of them are equipped 3 Plasma Cyclic, one with the Prototype weapon system.
I like that one. I like that one a lot.
Enforcer, 4 missiles, Starflare Ignition, Dark Strider, 2 Breachers, 2 Devilfish. I suppose my Devilfish have 2 Seekers. Let's hope they connect.
Yeah.
3 Fire Knife teams, one all with missiles, the other with plasmas. Starscythe team all with burst. Starscythe with flamers. Sunforge, Pathfinder, 3 stealth, 2 Vespid units.
Very nice. I do like the Vespid units a lot.
Vespid. It's got stuff. It's got loads of things. But I was like, round 1, Daemons. Cool.
I just played that matchup with Retaliation, and I had 2 Hammerheads and 2 Sunforge units, and it did not turn out super well for me. One interesting thing that I've been playing around with a little bit is having a hanging crisis unit. I don't know how efficient this is, but having right now my current list, for better or for worse, I'm playing an R2T on Saturday, is 3 commanders. So we got the Cold Star with the prototype weapon system, we got Farsight, and we've got the Enforcer with Uppy Downy. And it is 2 Starscythe units and 2 Sunforge units. So depending on the matchup, I can mix and match who's in what, and then I have a fairly expensive mission play / skirmish piece that can go do actions, take care of some screening in an area, or sit on a point or whatnot. So yeah, I'm curious. I found Demons to be really difficult, just as this particular matchup. I haven't figured it out myself, but the biggest thing that I learned from my last game against Demons was I should have put the Uppy Downy on the Melty unit, which sounds. In that matchup, he was running. It was a bunch of Soul Grinders, a bunch of Greater Demons. He didn't have much forward screening. He had 1 Plague Bearer unit, a couple Nurglings. So essentially, there was always going to be a frontline demon that I could take out, fire and fade out of range. Yeah. So that was I'd never really considered Sunforge with the Uppy Downy commander.
It's definitely a flex piece that you can tailor when you're in your matchups. But the thing is that there's a demon players are going to hate me for saying this, but I'm going to give you the 2 quick ways of beating demons.
Please do.
Number 1, he's the boss, Dark Strider.
Yeah, I did put him back on my list.
He screws up plans. He's just there and go, nope. Second thing is, the big demons want to go and kill your big shit. They want to go and hurt your Riptides, your crisis teams, whatever it is. What they don't want to have to deal with is a transport that sits right on the middle of the objective and goes, hi, fully loaded with breaches, and they go, ugh. They can't really deal with transports with shooting That's why they have the Defiler things with the shooting, but most lists are only running like a 1, maybe 2. But they cannot deal with transports outside of combat. And if they submit a big demon to go and kill a transport, then you just go, thanks, and now that big demon's dead.
Yep. Sure.
Just as simple as that. And as long as you're keeping your screens 7.5 inches away from each other, there is nowhere on the board that they can come. The demon game that I had at the Warmasters, granted I was running my Kauyon list, my deployment was the sweeping engagement, or whatever it's called, the Crucible of Battle, and I had everything 7.5 away, and he was just like, cool. And then Darkstrider jumping between whatever gaps that I needed to fill, and he was like, nice. And then I went, okay. And I overwatched the Demonettes and then went in and just killed Bellicor, and he was just like, nice.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. So there's a set thing that you can do against demons that do hurt them. But it's still, there is lists out there with just all big monsters, and you're like, oh, okay. All right.
The last GT that I went to, there was 3 Demons players. One of them was running like triple Corn Lord of Skulls plus big demons. So that's the meta that like I walked into the last GT. So that's why I'm teched for damage, because there's I lost my round 4 game against the number 1 guard player in the world. He was running a Storm Sword, or a Bane Sword or something. I tagged him with the Piranha. It was stuck in his deployment, so he didn't kill it in shooting in his turn. He did not kill it in shooting, so it was stuck in his deployment zone with the Piranha, just like bonking each other. Anywho, it stuck its gun on when it did activate turn 3. Guess what? He pulled Bring It Down, and he killed 2 Riptides and a Devilfish with it. So, anywho, just a random anecdote. One other thing that I'm curious about is, you innovate a lot with your lists. Like, I've taken a lot from you. So another example is like the Montka list that I'm running right now is it's like 35 SMS shots, and I really love it because I noticed that going second is better in Prime Nexus, so I wanted to build like a go first list. Now it's not as go first as the 9 Piranhas, but it is the Strike Swiftly. It is a 3-man Piranha, another Piranha unit. And then the SMS kind of forces my opponent to like say, "Hey, let's get the game going." Right? I was watching your latest video about taking out a 5-man intercessor unit against Blood Angels. So just being able to take like one of those, one of their 3 or 4 scoring pieces from a Marines player without having to actually show anything is like, all right, come on, let's get the game. Let's start playing. Like, let's get the game going. So, anywho, I'm just curious, like, what's in your, like, what are you experimenting with now? Like, what are you speculating as far as, like, potential units are concerned? Me and oh, goodness. Me and Donald, we were talking about Krootox Rampagers. I don't know if you ever thought about putting something like that into Kauyon or Montka.
I wonder why that conversation has come around. It may or may not, and Donald's in my paid Discord.
Sure.
I may have not been hinting the fact that I've got a particular list that I am working on that might be running. It might be called Monkey Madness, and it's combining. Well, okay, look. So I'm going to answer it in a different way.
Okay.
So you said I innovate, and I'm coming up with like loads of different like ideas and concepts for Tau.
Yep.
And I'm all about breaking these expectations of from the opponent's perspective of like, oh, okay, well, they're going to expect me to take this, this, and this, X, Y, and Z, and good gun, fast gun, and stuff like this. Opponents don't expect a Tau army to turn up with more combat than they do and good gun, fast gun.
Sure.
So I've got this concept of I'm going to throw 60 T6 wounds at you that's going to beat you up in the face whilst also shooting you from wherever I want on the board. And there's some clever text in terms of how the game unfolds in the mid couple of turns. And imagine the way that somebody commits to you and then you go, all right, well, we've got rapid ingress. you could rapid ingress a
For
unit
free.
of 6 Rampagers for free with stealth suits.
Yeah.
And then go, okay, deal with this. And then they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And then you charge them. And then you drop in crisis suits at 3 inches away. You shoot. You then fire and fade behind the wall of monkeys.
Yeah.
And then when they come to retaliate you, you overwatch. And then when they come to retaliate you, rapid ingress maybe another unit of monkeys. And then you've also got grenade strat. And the particular other combo, which I'm not going to give away yet, but I could kill Magnus without, with shooting one gun at him. And that is a lone spear.
I know. I won't
die.
Yeah, I was about to say the lone spear with the full rerolls. Yeah, I can. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
So, what I'm doing here is I'm upsetting the meta by challenging the way that the game works for Tau.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to learn some of the basic fundamentals of why the charge phase is really important, why positioning is really important, and you're focusing less about I'm going to take every gun that I possibly can, and thinking about situations that come up in game out of the many games that you have, and thinking, well, that was a problem. I couldn't deal with this. What do I need to solve that problem? And the combat element is non-existent for Tau outside of these Rampagers. And when you heroic intervene with the Rampagers, people were like, oh, how many times do you hear this question? But you don't get any benefits. No, you do get. You only get the fight's first benefit from when you charge. You still get any other abilities. So the Rampagers, when they heroic intervene, get line breaker, so you're able to do mortal wounds to them in their own turn.
Oh my gosh.
So statistically, if you position them well and you get the average of a 7-inch charge, you will get between 3 to 5 Rampagers in base contact, providing that you've pulled the right models from their shooting or anything like that. You could potentially get all of them. So then statistically, if you get 6 in, you're doing 6 mortal wounds. And you could potentially spike up more. And then you've got the attacks to add on top of that. So these are the solutions that I'm thinking about because I'm recalling the information that I've had from previous scenarios.
Sure.
And people aren't going to expect me to turn up with 15 crisis suits and 12 Rampagers.
Yeah. No, they will not. That's spicy.
It's these little things that I'm thinking of. And mainly, when I take away all the complicated jargon, I'm bored, right? I'm bored. I'm just I want to create new and innovative ways to challenge myself as a player and to also upset the norm and from my opponent's perspective, but also inspire other Tau players to look at the game differently.
Yeah.
So, I don't, and you were touched base when we were chatting offline about the dealing with the pressure and things like that. And I've got eyes on me, but I don't feel the pressure of that. I want to innovate, I want to inspire, and I want to motivate people to come up with their own little things. And any creative list that I've designed, take the Grundy maneuver, the reason that came about was because I played my mate with the Vanguard Marines with his Calgar brick and stuff like that. And I was like, this is really annoying. This keeps happening. So how can I prevent this? So, problem, solution, then that's how it came about. But in the past, when Tau have not been great, and they've been, back in 8th edition or...
How about the beginning of this edition?
Well, we even worse, the dark times where we didn't have anything, and we had the 9-man crisis brick and stuff like that, and we just... The win rate was in the 20%.
Oh my gosh.
One of my best events that I had was Nottingham, and I got 4 wins and a draw. And I innovated a list which was utilizing things like a little bit of jank, like Remora drones being able to go into devilfishes because they were a drone, and then you could get them out 3, and then they could move, and then they did the mortal wound stratagem. It was crazy.
That sounds ridiculous.
Having 10 breaches and 2 Remoras inside, 2 flyers inside a devilfish was funny. But I was utilizing the crisis suits in the charge phase to get my fire and fade. So I was thinking, well, I've not got the tools like everyone else has. How can I make my own tools? And it was using the core fundamental rules of the game to at least stand a chance in this, broken meta, or Tau can't contend with these top armies. I was like, hold my beer. I want to prove. And it's a reoccurring theme for me is I like to prove people wrong, but not in a malicious kind of way, but in a, look, think differently, look at what you have, and rather than complain, come up with creative solutions, because you've not got anything else. At the time, it's like, you need to do this until there's a change in the game or change to your faction. And there's a lot of factions that suffer from this, especially with the way that the releases are happening, and some are a little bit slower than others.
Yeah.
So rather than sit there and going, this sucks, then try and do something with it. There's not always a solution, but there's at least some things that you can be doing to make it a little bit more enjoyable and challenging for you as a player.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Experimentation-wise. On that note, I'm curious, just a couple of units that I've been thinking about lately that I don't hear much about. One is going back to the solo commanders, in Kauyon specifically. Just at least like the beat stick, you could put the three, if you wanted to, put the 3 Meltas and a cyclic on him, give him +1 to wound and sustain 2. He's not getting the full rerolls, which is a little interesting, and the reason I don't play him obviously now is you used to be able to take him on the tiny base, and that was just so silly. Like the amount of times I stole someone's home.
The XBA.
Yeah, and the other one is actually a flyer, which I don't know how you feel about flyers. I haven't seen you talking about a tiger shark at all, but not the tiger shark specifically, actually. It's called the razor shark strike fighter, because it has the 8 shots, strength 8 AP 2 for 2. Because something that I've struggled with is on layout 1, that staging area. I'm not sure if you're familiar. It's the one where the pocket is basically at the midpoint of deployment. So like for search and destroy, it's like there are 2 L's, like one here and one there. So just like being able to dig units out of that with something like the Razor Shark. So you don't seem like I'm just getting the vibes that you're not a flyer guy. You having none of it, yeah.
Flyers are for pussies.
Fair enough.
No. To be honest with you, like, look, we've because I've been around the block for too long. Flyers were a cancer in the game of 40k, especially thinking back to the AdMech days where it was just pod racing everywhere and flyers. Flyers offered a quick solution to a problem of like people staging and hiding. It was a way that, I can't interact with that, so I'm just going to throw flyers at them. You know, so at least I can just Sun Sharks go over. And I was definitely running 2 Sun Sharks.
Okay.
Come on. I mean, at the time it was just like zoom, 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 mortal wounds, and bap, bap, bap. Game is done. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But as I've matured as both a person and a player, I didn't enjoy that, honestly. I didn't enjoy going, it's turn 1 and you've lost 1,000 points of your army that you can't do anything with. And that was the cancer of 40k. Yeah. It was too much focus on alpha, not about actually having a tactically, challenging game between 2 generals where one single move could be the difference between a loss or a win, and then you can congratulate that opponent for being the better general. Back then, it wasn't. So that has left, I suppose, a little bit of a salty taste in both myself for using Sun Sharks and also being a victim of flyer spam. So I've never appreciated them or respected them in this game. I don't think they should be in the game. Fair. I'm sorry, guard players, you have some of the most gorgeous flyers, the Valkyries and stuff like that. But I think that the flyers are just not fitting how 40k is played currently. So that's why I don't take them. And the current rise of the Tiger Shark is based off a typical thing that happens in Warhammer. This is broken as shit. Let's play it until it gets nerfed. Yeah. And, I have a guy called Tez the Tiger Shark King. He's been running Tiger Sharks since the very beginning. He runs 1, he loves it. And you know what? Brilliant. He likes the model. He uses it very well. Great. It'll be sad to see it go and be legended, which it's going to get legended. Yeah. It's just a factor of how 40k has been going over the last couple of months. But the flyers, I think there's more creative solutions to solving the problems that you mentioned. That little relic could be, well, okay, they're going to stage there. What else have you got? Could you just send breaches in early and get them out of that? Could you just block them off from where they're going to try and get to?
Yep.
There's other solutions to the problem.
Sure.
Flyers, with the game, you have to rapid ingress and you have to move them out. A clever player will just block you from, where you can inevitably go to. The Razor Shark is interesting in Montka because of the lethals.
Yes, exactly.
But you could... The other points that you could be spending elsewhere is just way more crucial to me.
It is a pricey expenditure. I started playing Tau at the end of 9th, and everyone was like, Sunshark this, Sunshark that. So I bought a flyer. I haven't built it yet, but I have one that's empty or that's new in box right now. So I just and I haven't played it. I haven't played a flyer myself, other than one. I did play a Tiger Shark at an RTT. You got one on you?
Oh yeah, I got 2 there, but the one model I'd rather play is the goddamn Storm Surge.
Oh hell yeah! Oh, I like.
I got one.
That conversion's sick. Is that the 3D printed arms?
Yeah, the 3D printed arms.
I always
waves or something.
I always thought that looked the coolest as opposed to the gun platform.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, I just generally I think flyers, nah, they're not for the game currently. And if you want to have flyers, go and play Aeronautica.
Very fair. I will say one thing that I ran into a lot when I was starting out was all these people in my local meta who just have like Tau PTSD, I call it, where they were just the shield drone strats from last edition and the monster crisis bricks running around the board just deleting everything. Thankfully, I've been able to turn a lot of the haters. People were just like, "Oh, you play Tau, blah blah blah." At the end of the day, like, we're playing a hobby, man. It's like not a big deal. Like, I'm sorry that like somebody 3 years ago hurt your ego so badly that you're just berating a new player to the game. But so for all Tau players out there who run into something like that, don't freaking worry about it, man. It ain't that serious.
I mean, we've definitely been a cause of a lot of problems over the years because it's not necessarily about, Tau players. It's not about that. It's just that fundamentally our rules and the way that Tau was designed was flawed.
Sure.
The drone city was just a cancer again.
It was.
And then the whole thing that I used to abuse massively was a commander or a fireside marksman with the 2 drones. The drones had the unit had the infantry keyword, and then the character could be protected by being within 3 inches of the unit, and then you could string the drones out together. On the objective, and then put a banner down with the drone. It's like R2D2 of utility. And then when they tried to charge the drone, because the fireside marksman had infantry keyword, you could use the -2 to charge, and they could never interact with it. It was like, what the hell? Or you'd have a commander on top of a building, but there was 2 drones underneath going, "You can't see me."
Oh,
it was
gosh.
just ridiculous. But that's the way that the game was. There was many other things in other armies that were broken, but now we're in a healthier spot to actually play a healthier game. So Tau players, fortunately, will be immortalized by being that army that was just bullshit, and everyone has this like the backup against, Tau players. And unfortunately, if you are a Tau player, you're going to have to deal with that, but sod 'em.
Exactly.
It's a healthier game, and it's just a product of a bygone age.
Yeah, thank goodness. Yeah, it is really cool to like be playing 40k in such like a balanced meta. Just speaking of like people hating on Tau, whatnot, I am curious. I know you've only played Tau, save for maybe right when you started. Did you pick up a different army? Am I remembering that correctly? No, it was just Tau, only Tau. Okay, yeah, I'm curious. Like, if you ever were to start a second army, which army would that be and why? You got it on you? You have a second army. The dwarves? Oh, dwarf. Nice. Hell yeah.
Yeah, basically, okay, so the reason I got into 40k was by accident. It was fantasy mainly, and I had lizardmen, so I loved combat. I loved the fantasy realms. I loved all the back lore and everything with the children of the old ones and everything. I got hooked and fixed on it. 40k, I just stumbled upon because I didn't want to do combat in 40k. It looked boring, and I had my lizards. I had giant dinosaurs riding giant dinosaurs. That was cool.
It's about as cool as it gets.
Exactly, right? 14-year-old boy walking into a show, seeing a dinosaur riding a dinosaur. I was like, yeah, cool. Yeah. And then Tau was just the non-combat army. So I fell in love with the lore, bought Farsight model, blah, blah, blah. Told this story 1,000 times. But that's how I got into 40k.
Yeah.
Now, one of my, I suppose, criticisms, especially when I was looking to play with Team England, was that I only played Tau, and I needed to branch out and play other factions. And with the success that I'm having right now, I've had comments from good friends of mine saying you'd be phenomenal with other armies. Like you're like, have you ever considered that? And I'm not a meta chaser because it doesn't tick my box. Chasing the meta, no. I don't want the most broken stuff. I want the underdog. I want the thing that has the problems that no one else is solving.
Yep.
That's been my appeal for me. But I do like, kind of gone full circle, I do like utilizing the combat phase. And so looked at Space Dwarves and I was like, oh, well, they have the shooting. I look like a dwarf anyway, so nice. That's a nice little transition. So I have a League of Votan army, and they're all still in the cellophane wraps, and I've had them since release.
Okay.
Not even built a model yet. And that's how, like, I feel like I'm betraying the greater good. But I did play with Blood Angels and Space Wolves for a bit when I was trying out with Team England, like, a couple of years ago. So I think I would consider it. But I never have my heart fully in it. It would purely just to be to flex. To say, you all expect me to only play Tau. Well, actually, I can play these armies. And since doing the Puretide Program anyway, I have been playing all of the armies to do scenarios and TTS training with my students.
That's smart.
So I have actually improved my own understanding of how to utilize armies by having to play them to demonstrate the capability of other armies. So I do have a very good knowledge of the game, obviously, and I do understand a lot about other factions from my own like practice and my own experience, but playing them definitely improves you as a player. And just to add to this, the best way of learning to overcome one of your weaker areas is to actually swap factions with either a friend. So let's say me and you, we were having a game, you were a combat army and you just kept getting dumpstered by shooting armies and vice versa. We could have a game and go, I tell you what, John, I'm going to play your combat army and you're going to play my Tau army, and we're going to coach and train and teach each other. So learning from your opponent's perspective is hugely like valuable. And if you remember Brian Sepp, who plays a lot of armies, he plays Tau and he plays Orcs, and now plays T-Sons, but he played these two factions. And one thing he said to me once when we were chatting was like, being an Orc player has made me a better Tau player, and being a Tau player has made me a better Orc player, because they're completely polar opposites. So I think if you are to choose another faction, do something completely different, because it's fresh and it actually teaches you more about the overall game rather than just being pigeonholed into the one way of playing the army that you're used to playing, aka Tau or combat army. Maybe you want to pick up a shooting army. It will teach you and refresh your excitement and love of the game as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I do technically own a Custodes army. Well, not technically. I own a Custodes army. I've only put it on the table a handful of times, but I think it's what you're saying is a great idea, especially if you're in the spirit of becoming a better player. I think that I typically look at the meta and other armies and my strategy from just the viewpoint of me. You know what I mean? Like from the Tau player looking out, as opposed to like looking at a mirror of the other player. And I think that would be very helpful for me to put Marines on the table, for example. There are aspects of the fight phase that I should know a little bit better.
It's also quite nice when you're going against a combat army and you're having to kind of correct the combat player by saying, no, that's not how the piling or the consolidation goes. Like understanding the piling and consolidate. And I think one thing that catches Tau players out is the typical trick of you put out a screen, they charge with one unit, and they charge with another unit on the closest side to you. They wipe it out with the first unit that they charged, and then this unit can then pile in and then attack something for fresh. And then once they've killed that you've not predicted, they'll then consolidate into something that thought it was safe behind the devilfish or whatever it may be. So that you will only predict and know if you understand the way that the pile-in and consolidate and the activations work. So, you'll hear a lot of people say, oh, just stay 4.1 away. But actually, it's not 4.1 away from your unit. It's and for those people that are newer to the game, the reason it's 4.1 is because a consolidation move is 3 inches, and then your engagement range is an inch. So if you stay 4.1, they cannot engage you from a consolidation move, so it allows you to then shoot and act as normally. But what they don't factor in is charge distances. So somebody can go, well, if they high roll, they can position this unit here, block themselves off with the back models, and then have the front models be able to move in positions where you didn't predict, and then that extends their pile-in and the consolidation move. So you've got to factor things in like, what's the average charge? What could they get? And how you can manipulate that to stop them from tagging stuff or getting into optimal positions. And that boils down to another thing about, well, what if they do that to deny you primary? And you can do all of these tricks yourself with Tau units, but you have to nail the precision of your models in where they move and how they charge. And I've been doing that for all of this edition, like utilizing charges to then get onto objectives to deny primary and various things like that, and also wrapping units and stopping things from moving. So Tau players, if you're struggling, learn the combat phase. Stop glossing over some of the core rules and sit down with a book or whatever it is and read it and really digest it.
Yeah, there's a lot of optimizations for Tau in the combat phase. Tagging stuff, like you mentioned, quite a few different things. I heroicked with a Riptide the other day to save myself some primary, because it was a lone Cadre Fireblade on a point, and I said, all right, I'm going to keep that 5 primary this turn. Ended up drawing with, it was a number 7 player in the world. So, anywho, combat is important. You need to know it.
And also, heroically intervening with Riptides because they got the Walker keyword.
Yeah, and they just bonk.
Gonyo heroically intervened against Alex Harrison in the USA versus England game and saved himself 5 points on primary.
No way, did he?
Yeah. And it's with these little things that people will not think of. And, one of the key stratagems I've been using with Farsight with his free strat has been heroic intervention, because I can suddenly put OC8 on an objective, and therefore my opponent's designed to try and take my primary, but ended up not achieving that, which is massive from a game state.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool, Kyle. That's all I had as far as questions are concerned. But thank you for coming on. It was really cool to talk to you. Like I said, as someone who learned from you and implemented some of those practices, it's just it's a little surreal to be talking to you and chatting Tau. So it's pretty cool.
It's a pleasure being on, and like I said, I will give my time and energy to the greater good, and obviously it's really nice to hear and humbling from my side as well to have people reach out and be part of, I suppose, the whole thing, which is, I think what you're doing on your YouTube channel is great. You're giving content out there for the newer players and the people out there, and obviously your channel will continue to grow because the information that you're giving out there is what people are after, and the more of the sharing and the community side of things is better overall. Because I think that one problem at the moment with, I suppose, competitive players or people that are running, their own businesses is that they keep everything close to the chest. And I think the more people share their own ideas, obviously, promotes other people to suddenly start sharing. And that's kind of, I suppose, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of... it's inspiring,
contagious.
Contagious, that's the one. Yeah. So it's like, and people will bounce off each other, and it's really good to have content creators out there that are trying to do, good things for not just themselves but for everyone else. So keep up the good work, mate. Really impressed.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I took up this endeavor just honestly just to get better myself, but also kind of push to people all the things that I had to learn the hard way early on, and yeah, a cool byproduct is getting to talk to like different faction specialists.
Yeah.
I've talked to you. I talked to the number one Drukhari player in the world. Hopefully, I'll have more people on. Again, to kind of give away our secrets per se, in the hopes of elevating our 40k games together, right? Because the only way I can, or the best way for me to get better, honestly, that I've experienced is after I lose a game or win a game, is I just ask my opponent, hey, like, what do you think I did wrong there? Like, what could I have done better? And yeah, getting the perspective of the other player that's opposing to you is very eye opening in my experience.
I think, and obviously we could go on a tangent on this, but it's really important that you mention that, because I think the one thing that people always forget to do at the very beginning of a game as well is to establish a bit of a connection between you and your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's different reasons why people are playing the game competitively or just going to an event.
Yeah.
I touched on it in my last video and talked about that I don't focus on the winning side of things or the points, because that's not my primary focus. It is a byproduct of my performance, but the key thing that I'm wanting to focus on is learning and developing both as a player and as a sportsman, if you will. And when I turn around to an opponent and find out, where they're from, how far they've traveled from, or what got them into the game, I'm creating a bond between me and my opponent. And people are playing it for different reasons. Not everybody goes into a game wanting to just win. There are competitive players that want to win, which is absolutely fine. We're playing a competitive game. But some people could just be like, I love painting my models. I want to go to an event. I want to meet new people, and I want to have a great time. And establishing that at the beginning will help, the community grow, but also give you that kind of relaxed atmosphere when you're at the table. And then everything else from that point is, oh, well, I had a great game against so on and so forth. And then this happened. That was really cool. It's cool stories and over a few beers and stuff like that. And that's what it is.
Yeah.
But your thing that you mentioned about asking what I did wrong, I ask questions like, what did you spot that I didn't? What was that turn that you've realized, like, oh, I'm going to do this?
There's an opening. Yep.
And my opponent, Warmasters, said in the Daemons game, it was like, you pretty much had like a meticulous kind of like a deployment and everything, and I knew that it was going to be like a very trading slow game. And then there was this one thing where I looked at you and your eyes changed to, right, now I'm going to fuck you. I was like, what? And it was like, in your eyes, and it was the rapid ingress and the Overwatch and the
oh my gosh.
It was like that was just like
game ender. Yeah.
And that's that kind of interaction that you'll have in games where it's important to understand your opponent's kind of decision-making tree, and then from that you can be like, well, I could have prevented that by doing X, Y, and Z. So always talk to your opponent and celebrate whoever's the better general. If your opponents beat you, great, celebrate, and don't try and get too hooked up in the fact that, oh, I got beat and stuff, because it happens. It's dice at the end of the day, and you can only learn from the better generals. You're not going to learn by constantly winning. And I welcome someone to beat me, and Ben Jones is a prime example. Me and Ben Jones from Vanguard Tactics had never played each other for years when we were part of Vanguard Tactics, and then suddenly 3 back-to-back super majors. I beat him twice, and then he got his revenge, and it was like amazing. And we really connected over the fact that he'd finally beaten me, but he'd beaten me because he had certain decisions, and like we celebrated it because
he figured it out. He figured out the matchup. He deserved it.
Yeah. So it's all that kind of thing. And I think if you are trying to improve yourself, don't get hooked up on the small details. Just aim to better yourself. Enjoy your time because you're spending 3 hours with an opponent.
Yeah.
And then you'll learn a lot more because you're putting less pressure on the wins. And it's something that I talk about repeatedly. Behaviors equal outcome. If you focus on the outcome, the best thing you'll ever achieve is that outcome. Why not supersede it by focusing on what gets you there?
Yeah, the fundamentals. Yeah, which absolutely resonates with me. Well, thanks again, Kyle. I really appreciate it, man. I'll be at LVO myself, so
Definitely see you there, man.
Yeah, we'll have to grab a beer
Absolutely.
and have a good time. Maybe with some members of the Puretide Program also.
We'll be there. We'll
Yeah,
be there. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. But until then, and yeah, I will. I'll catch. I'll catch you later. And yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate it,
No
Kyle.
worries. You're
Yeah,
welcome.
cool. Catch you later. Thanks for sticking to the end of the video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed my conversation with Kyle today, please drop me a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to comment down below which matchup you would be most interested to see in the Montka matchup series for a chance to get featured in the next video below. So thanks again for joining, everybody, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.